Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023, and you are watching Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast. Today, we're going to get into whether or not Rampage should be cancelled after its awful rating this past week, as well as talk about whether or not WWE should have picked a bigger venue for this year's Money in the Bank in London. And then finally, we're going to be previewing today's episode of AEW Dynamite. But today, it's a special two-man show, and I'm joined here with Clark Taylor. How are you, Clark?
I'm doing so well. It's a fabulous Tuesday out here, February 22nd, as you said. I mean, how are we already a month and a half into this year? Over a month and a half. It's ridiculous. But stoked to be here. I got a fun weekend planned ahead. Stoked about Dynamite. Stoked to talk about all the subjects we got on tap. And yeah, all around, couldn't be doing much better.
Great to hear. And yeah, you have got a busy weekend coming up, but today we're talking about AEW. And we'll be firstly talking about whether or not AEW Rampage should be cancelled. Now, for you, those of you who don't know and haven't heard already, this past week's episode of AEW Rampage averaged only 287,000 viewers, according to WrestleNomics, which is the lowest audience score the show has had since launching. The show was moved to an earlier time slot. However, it got moved to the exact same time slot for the exact same reason this exact weekend last year. And even with all of that, and still going up against the, I think it was the All-Stars basketball game, even with all of this year's was 40% lower. Their audience was 40% lower than it was this time last year, which is awful. As an average, TV ratings are down by about 5% this year. So 40% lower, that is not, you cannot blame that on, less people watching TV. That is just bad ratings. And to investors at this point, and don't get me wrong, right? There's a few other things going on, right? And this isn't the score. It was down 24% this week, Rampage, right? So it's not always this low, but this score does get, Warner Bros. Discovery, investors thinking to themselves, why are we paying for this? Like it does put pressure on Warner Brothers to cancel the show, in all honesty, to say it as blunt as it is. But of course, we already know that AEW and Warner Brothers have a great relationship, or so we're told. But the one interesting thing is that AEW have filed to trademark AEW Collision as a new show. And this has got a lot of people thinking, is this going to be a new weekly show? It's trademark. The trademark makes it seem like it is going to be a weekly show. And this kind of makes me think, is AEW Collision going to replace AEW Rampage? And if it does, it's a genius move, because basically it keeps AEW in that time slot, but it replaces AEW Rampage, so the entire year-by-year ratings we can just ignore for the time being. And we already know this, and if you don't know this, you should. And it's that investors, network investors, and networks in general, don't know that much about wrestling. They really do not, right? So if AEW Collision replaces AEW Rampage, and AEW Collision's ratings are a bit lower than AEW's Rampage's ratings were 2 years prior, investors aren't going to really care. They won't. So it would be a brilliant idea, which would both save the relationship between AEW and Warner Brothers, while also not having investors being like, well, why is AEW Rampage still on when ratings are declining this much? Now, Clark, what are your thoughts on this entire situation?
I'm with you. It's a tedious one, to say the least. And I think it's funny because we do talk a ton about TV ratings, and it's very clear where Rampage stands as far as that's concerned. But from the in-arena experience, live events wise, I've been to a few AEW shows, and I've been to 2 Rampage tapings pre All Out, and I've been to 2 Dynamite tapings where they also taped Rampage. And the idea of having Dark to lead in in the arena to kind of settle in, get into your seats before we go live, and then having Rampage as the secondary act almost after Dynamite, because people don't necessarily always want to leave. I know there's been talk of people leaving arenas, but um for the live event experience, the length of the show it is helpful. To your points you made about the collision idea and the rebrand, I would agree with that 100%. I don't necessarily have a problem with Rampage as a whole, as a show. If you do watch it consistently, it's entertaining. Um, say what we will about the ratings, but it is an entertaining wrestling show, and I think a rebrand is the move. But I don't think taking away content for AEW is actually a positive thing, and I don't think that's the next step or the next move.
Yeah, absolutely not. And Tony Khan is making an announcement tonight on Dynamite, which we'll get into a bit later on, but we might as well talk about it somewhat now. And he said that that's going to be a major step forward for AEW. So I highly doubt Rampage is going to get as well. If it's going to get cancelled, I doubt they're going to not have something to replace it with. So yeah, I think AEW Collision would be the right move. I think it makes a lot of sense logically speaking. But yeah, I mean, 40% lower in 1 year, though. That is bad.
It's a big dip.
I
Say the
mean,
least.
what do you reckon the reason is for it? Why is such a decline?
I think it's a combination of factors. I think number one, I'm not saying the pandemic's over, because it's not. COVID-19 very much still exists, but at the end of the day, arenas are full now.
Yeah,
We're not 6 feet apart, and seats are being sold, and there's other events. There are concert events. Wrestling was in a unique position during the pandemic where it was one of the, I think they're at the forefront as far as staying active, doing
yeah,
it in empty arenas and then adding back fans quickly. They're right there. I think that's a factor that plays into this a little bit. I think the time slot is brutal. Following 2 hours of live professional wrestling from the WWE in most markets is just
yeah.
something that's difficult to do. If you want that extra hour, it's there, but there's only a select group of the fan base that wants that extra hour.
But
I
in
happen
fairness,
I
in
happen to
fairness,
be a
that
part of
was
that,
in fairness,
but
it was the exact same 12 months ago. There
right.
was crowds a year ago, because the crowds came back nearly 2 years ago now, and
No
SmackDown
doubt,
was also still on then.
no doubt. And I'm not saying it's just the fact that that's not the only reason, but that time slot I felt like was going to catch up to him.
Yeah,
Could be, because the other thing is, and I am in agreement with you. It has been a year, but at the same time, there is, I don't want to say a phenomenon, but like realistically speaking, something new and fresh, something out of the gates. You might go out of your way to watch in a
oh,
unique time
absolutely.
slot by comparison to something that's been around for a year now. And I think that's caught up. That's where I think a rebrand is the move. If you're asking me on that, if I'm calling the shots, just a slight rebrand. I don't think there's anything wrong with AEW Rampage, the product, basically besides the ratings. Only because it is live professional wrestling half of the time, and sometimes it's taped. But on a Friday night slot, that's not ideal necessarily, but there is a place for it. And I don't think it necessarily has to be called Rampage, a rebrand, and a reset. I
Yeah,
think, and you can really accomplish what you were looking for in the first place. And it's
yeah,
almost, I don't want to say no harm, no foul, but it's kind of like a, it's a learning experience in that regard. Um, because it's like, hey, yeah, just AEW itself isn't gonna pop ratings, but we can get there somehow. It's possible.
yeah.
And so yeah, the rebrand is where I would, you know, push all my chips to the middle of the table on that one.
Yeah, I mean, personally, my biggest issue with Rampage is actually how predictable it is. It's not as predictable as Dark, but pretty much every match on AW Rampage you can predict the winner easily. The matches are very predictable. Whenever you have a top star on the show, they're not against another, well, usually not against another top star. because of those matches are all saved for Dynamite, and it just Rampage feels like such a B show, but not in terms of like what SmackDown was like between 2012 and 2016, but even less so because SmackDown during that time still had important matches. It still felt, it still felt unpredictable a lot of the time. And obviously there was big issues with SmackDown because it just felt unimportant. But AEW Rampage is in the worst position because it's even more obvious to me. And I think that if they really want to, make it more interesting, then I do think what they need to do is they need to make more. Basically, they need to just have better booking. To put it completely bluntly, they need to make fights which are more interesting, and they have the roster to do so. And the fact that it's named AEW Collision makes me think that maybe that will be the show. Maybe Dynamite won't have many crossovers with Ring of Honor and New Japan, where maybe AEW Collision will be where the crossovers are a bit more, and perhaps that's going to be how they make that show a bit more interesting. And certainly, I think that would be a decent idea. I would not be opposed to.
I agree with you on that. Like from a booking standpoint, we've talked often, I think, off air about incorporating ROH, and
Yeah,
I don't know that Rampage needs to become the ROH show. I don't think that's actually the move at this current point in
yeah,
time. I don't think that's where we go. I If it's me, Collision I like, and I did not consider the crossover idea. That's where you see some ROH stars actually cross. You might see differently than normal. That's promotionally makes a ton of sense.
yeah,
I do think from a rating standpoint, the move to make it more important is to build stars and put them on that show, and then people will watch. People
yeah,
will go out of their way to watch things that feel important. And that's
yeah.
the true solution, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Ring of Honor were rumored to be doing something with New Japan, and it clearly fell through. So perhaps the AEW Collision thing could also involve New Japan, and that's the reason it fell through. This was like the compromise they made with New Japan. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people were saying, why don't they replace Rampage with ROH? But the truth behind it is that firstly, the AEW roster is too bloated anyway. You can't get rid of it. You can't get rid of an hour. The hour needs to be used better, but you can't get rid of it. But also, to put it bluntly, Warner didn't want ROH. That's why it's on a subscription service, which nobody is paying for at a ridiculous price. We spoke about it last week, but yeah, it's that's why it's there and in the position it is. And as a long-term Ring of Honor fan, it does annoy me, which is why I keep going on rants about it. But that is the truth. Warner Brothers didn't want it, so now it's you got to pay $9.99 a month to watch it without even the pay-per-views. But anyway, let's now move on to something else which is quite difficult to watch, and that is Money in the Bank in the UK. Then if you wanted to watch it, well, fat chance it's doesn't look good at all for you, because they're doing Money in the Bank, of course, in the O2 Arena, and I spoke about this earlier in the year, and the capacity for wrestling is just under 20,000. Well, today was the pre-sale for Money in the Bank and SmackDown in London, and which takes place in June. And quite strangely, if you wanted to, go on the pre-sale for this for this show, you had to get combo tickets. You had to get both Money in the Bank and SmackDown, meaning fans had to pay ridiculous prices for the tickets. In fact, the pre-sale actually was delayed an hour from 12 until 1 today because the site crashed because 30,000 people were in the queue when they was, under 20,000 tickets, and not all tickets went on sale today. It was just a pre-sale. So it was it's basically there's too much demand. That's what it is. It's ridiculous prices. They should have gone to a bigger arena. Now, a lot of people are saying, why don't they run Wembley? And the truth is, the truth actually about specifically Wembley is it's very, very difficult to book. But there are other arenas which in the UK which they were interested in, but the issue with those is that they don't have a roof, and we all know that UK weather is unpredictable, and that was why they ran Cardiff last year, because Cardiff has a roof. That's why it was run, and a lot of people were like, "Well, why are they doing it? Down in Wales, why are they doing that?" Well, that was why. They clearly wanted to do London this time, but it's just ridiculous doing a pay-per-view when this many people want to come. And the way that they've done it as well is you need to buy combo tickets. It's ridiculous. It's completely unfair to the vast majority of the audience, right? If you did it individually, then perhaps you could justify the lack of tickets and be like, well, some people weren't able to get SmackDown tickets, some people weren't able to get Money in the Bank tickets, but this was absolutely ridiculous. But as per usual, the scalpers were right on this. Bought up a lot of tickets, and look, right, ticket resales are starting at £900. £900. Some of these tickets, by the way, started at 120. They're now going for 900. It is absolutely ridiculous. But WWE is saying the more tickets will be released when the general sale happens. But it is already believed that most of the tickets were available during the pre-sale. So yeah, a lot of people wanted to go to that show. I wanted to go to that show. Chaos wanted to go to that show. Sowell, well, pretend he didn't want to go to that show, but he wanted to go to that show. And yeah, we were trying to get tickets this morning and we were not able to, but somebody else who wanted to go to that show, in fact, he wanted to fly over just for that show, is Clark Taylor. So Clark, what did you think about this entire ticket mess?
I wanted to go to the show so bad. I still want to go to the show so bad. It doesn't mean I'm not going to the show. The pre-sale thing, woof. This is tough. I'll say this. This seems like a pretty simple solution. If demand's that high, got to get a bigger venue, man. I mean, we're talking about the best pros in the world at promotion. The WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment. They're as good as it gets. Get it in a bigger building. Get us all tickets. Not get them for us. We'll get them, but just make them available. And this game's a joke. When it comes to the SmackDown and Money in the Bank combo, it's silly too. And then, now you got to go 2 nights. You travel wise, it messes everybody up. I mean, it's a funny situation. The O2 Arena is cool as could be, and an under 20,000 seat arena can be electric. Ironically, almost because of the concentrated sound, it can be louder than a larger venue. But this is something that deserves a larger venue because the demand is so high and it'll sell out either way. So somebody upstairs, somebody that knows what they're doing, figure that out, because that's what we need.
They could have sold out a stadium for Money in the Bank. Imagine that. It was meant to be in a stadium last year, and they just didn't sell enough tickets. But think about that, Money in the Bank in a stadium, huge crowd. That would be great luck for WWE. In fact, that's why this entire international expansion for events makes a lot of sense, because you can't sell out a stadium in the US all the time. You can't do it. They tried with Money in the Bank last year, and it failed. It failed big time. But you can do it internationally. So honestly, and it's these super showdown ideas, like those, just like put these normal pay-per-views on internationally, like Money in the Bank, like they are doing for here, but put it in a stadium. It's just a perfect idea, but instead they've decided to put it in the O2 Arena and just not being able to sell it. It's absolutely ridiculous. And Chaos here in the comments saying perhaps they got cold feet about doing the arena. I think the weather probably is the biggest factor, but I still think they could have solved that. I mean, let's be honest here. UK fans would be more than happy to get a bit wet while watching it. We go to football games, rugby games, and get soaked. It's not like in America, I think, where people are less likely to perhaps go to games. Because I have heard that before when the weather's bad. It's not like that at all here. And you could easily cover the ring and all that. You could put, something they've done it for WrestleMania before and all that, right? It's not that big of an issue.
Did it for 37.
Yeah.
In Tampa,
and that had a delay.
Rained.
That's a bad example, but yeah, they could do a bigger one.
That was lightning, though. That's lightning. Lightning and rain are different, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And they had the rain factor covered. So that was my point I was making, because I'm in agreement with you on. Obviously, it's a bad example in the sense of they had to have a delay, but lightning, you can't control lightning. You could have a lightning delay in a domed arena.
Yeah, no, right? Absolutely. I mean, Jacob here is saying that people are going to break in. Hope not, but who knows? And then we got Bell in the comments here, and they are saying that I'm not going to Money in the Bank or SmackDown or AEW when it comes to London. I haven't been on holiday since before COVID, so sorry. Wait, what? When it comes to London, I haven't been on holiday since before COVID, so that's what I'm going to do. But if it's a bad situation, put Money in the Bank in the Olympic Arena or Wembley. I mean, that's a point. Isn't the Olympic?
Olympics covered.
Can somebody in the comments, Jacob, in the comments, are you able to fact check that? Does the Olympic
Anybody
have a
get us
retractable
on that? We need Kobe facts and info.
Yeah, we haven't got Kobe today, but
Somebody get us on that. Is Wembley covered? Because that's the solution.
I don't.
I'm sorry, not Wembley. I'm sorry, Olympic. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Whoa, woof. Woo. Back that up. Is the Olympic Stadium?
It's not. Covered? It's not covered. It's not covered.
It's not.
Chaos has just confirmed it's not covered. But I mean, there's a few options they could have done, right? And I mean, a lot of the thing is they're doing it in June as well. When they did it last September, the big issue is that they could not. What was I going to say? Yeah, when they did it last September, they could not use any football arenas because those would be the football season. The Premier League season had already started, so they could not use any of those. Whereas in June, it's not during the season, so they could do it.
New question: what's the nearest geographic covered stadium that's bigger than the O2? Somebody get us that in the comments. Now we're talking. We're using the comments as facts and info today.
I think it's actually the Principality. Which they ran for Clash at the Castle, but I mean, I think they sell well again. But
is it that's the only one? There's got to be something.
Wembley. There is Wembley, but it's very difficult to book. But I mean, honestly, if WWE was smart about it and did it well, they could have booked Wembley. They could have in June. They could have booked Wembley.
Is it covered?
But Wembley's covered.
Okay, yeah. Wembley is covered.
Yeah. But it's just.
Oh yeah, because they did Fury and Dillian. Never mind. I should have known that. I'm sorry.
Jacob in the comments saying somewhere in France is the closest. Great, so the UK is losing their own pay-per-view, but
no, they're not going to France. No, Jacob, no.
Answer. We just announced tomorrow that screw it.
France,
we're moving to France, and Ruben is in the comments, and they're saying the AEW Rampage should be Ring of Honor Rampage for 2 hours live show. I mean, the issue with that is that I mean, if it's live, maybe, but the main AEW roster needs another hour. They do need another hour. So you can't replace it with just Ring of Honor like that. And also, as I said earlier in the show, Warner Brothers don't want ROH. It's as simple as that.
I don't know how they get that second hour, and if they're consecutive too, right? Like then you're going up to midnight Pacific time, and you're already at a dangerous time slot there. Post a lot of stuff. Where people are going to bed. It's just it's a tough time slot to navigate.
Yeah.
And so adding another hour, I don't know about there.
Yeah, and Bell saying in the comments, the roof can close in Wembley, or they could use Wimbledon.
Wimbledon's a good call.
I mean, that could be a shout. I'm doing a
hang on. Bell with the comment of the day right there. That Wimbledon. Now we're talking. By the way,
42,000. They could do 42,000, so an extra 12,000 in Wimbledon.
Well, you want to talk about close. You want to talk about a little stare down right back at AEW. They booked the U.S. Open venue at Grand Slam, a little smaller. Wimbledon, WWE. Ooh. And I'm a fan of both, but yeah. That could be. That's dangerous, Bell. Great comment there. That's awesome.
That is a hell of a shout. But apparently, Chaos in the comments is saying the issue with that is that Wimbledon does charge a lot. Well, WWE are also charging a lot. Jacob saying, let's get a wrestling tennis crossover. Let's do it.
We'll get Seth Rollins in the all white.
Yes.
The white gear.
Playing tennis.
Seth Rollins in the all white. Of course.
Right. Djokovic off the top rope. But I mean, that would be sick. And I would truly, truly love that to happen. But now let's get into
the only opportunity for a Cornette comeback with the rackets. I'm sorry. The last tennis joke. We have to go to the next one. I did not want to cut you off.
But yeah, let's get right into AEW Dynamite, which is tonight. And Tony Khan has another major announcement. Now, for months, I have basically talked about how I'm just not happy with the amount of major announcements Tony Khan does. But they haven't done one in a while, to be fair. So they're doing one today, an important announcement, which he says is going to be great for the future of AEW. Now, what is it going to be? Some people were saying possible UK show. We just talked about WWE's disaster in the UK today, but yeah. But other people are saying that perhaps it could be AEW Collision. And that personally is what I think is going to happen. I think Collision's me replacing Rampage, and that is what my prediction is going to be. But what about you, Clark? What is your thought process on this one?
I hate to be that guy, but like it is Collision, right? Isn't the announcement that it's going to be a new show or it's going to be a
They haven't
rebrand?
said that, but probably.
Not unofficially, but like realistically, logically speaking, unless it's like some kind of signing we just did not see coming. I
Yeah.
don't know what else it could be. And yeah, I think it's a rebrand for Rampage. I think it's gonna be great. And I'm actually hoping the best for it because I enjoyed Rampage, especially initially out of the gates. I really did. All of the Rampages I've attended in person have been incredible. Really, really fun shows to be at as a wrestling fan. And if the rebrand can inject new life into the show, that's amazing. And that's what I'm hoping for, is what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, that for me is what I'm certainly hoping for. Some people are speculating that perhaps, based on him saying that it could be important for the future of AEW, some people are speculating it's a streaming deal or something like that. But yeah, who knows? Bell in the comments is saying that perhaps it could be something to do with ROH. It could do. He did say the important for the future of AEW, though, which makes me think it probably won't be ROH. But who knows? I mean, at this point, I certainly wouldn't put it past TK, to be honest, to hype up something for AEW when it's not related to them. But yeah, I just hope it is something, quite interesting for today. And I mean, it's gotten to the point where one of the biggest things AEW can do to boost viewers is for Tony Khan to say there's some major announcement. But I mean, at least they haven't done it in a while, right? So I'm not gonna crab all over this one, and let's just hope it's a good announcement, and the AEW Collision will be good. But the one thing which I haven't touched upon yet is that for those because you haven't seen the trademark for AEW Collision, which is how we all know about it, they misspelled Collision.
The,
There was
actually,
no I.
they did Collison, who Nick Collison was a basketball player that played for University of Kansas, one of my favorite players ever. So if they're gonna do AEW Collison, I'm in. I've got a Collison jersey in my collection, to be honest.
It's awful. How on earth?
I don't know why they named it after Nick Collison.
How on earth can somebody in the legal team misspell it? That's your job. Your job is to file the trademark, check the trademark, and submit the trademark.
That's what we call a whiff. That one's a
It's
whiff.
bad.
Swing
It's bad.
and a miss.
It's bad. I mean, it really is bad. But yeah, I mean, let's
Can't
get
have
in.
that.
Yeah,
You got to be spelling stuff right.
on
at the end of the
trademarks.
day.
It's like quite a simple thing to do.
It's just spelling.
The top line of it, you can't misspell it. But anyway, they did. But let's get into the next match now, and that is Orange Cassidy is defending the AEW All Atlantic Championship against Wheeler Yuta. And truthfully, I said when this title was introduced that I don't know. I just thought they had too many titles when they introduced it. I didn't understand what the big difference was. I thought at first that they were going to you'd have to defend it against a different continent or something. And I was like, well, maybe that could be a cool idea, or a different country or something like that, right? But no, it's just another normal title, and it's like, well, what's in between this and the TNT, sorry, and what's in between this and the world title? There's nothing. It's completely and utterly pointless. It's just a prop for Orange Cassidy's backpack at this point. But yeah, he's defending his backpack against Wheeler Yuta tonight. And yeah, I think it's clear as day that Orange Cassidy's probably going to win. But Clark, anything to add?
So I'm actually a huge Cassidy fan, and I when they introduced the All Atlantic title, I agreed with a lot of what you just said, but it reminds me a little bit of the European title during the Attitude Era, where they would put on a guy that's really over, but that wouldn't make sense to be necessarily in the mid-card title scene. At that time, it was the Intercontinental belt in the WWE. It'd be the TNT belt in AEW. And maybe not quite also ready for the world title scene. But then at the end of the day, HBK carried the European belt at various times. And that's kind of the way I saw the All Atlantic belts. And I kind of dig it, almost the way that they had the United States title in WCW too, and the TNT title. I'm sorry, not the TNT title, the television title in WCW back in the day. I saw it as a, it's the second mid card title, but it's unique to the other one because it's kind of character driven. And Pac carrying it at first, I thought was awesome. I think Orange Cassidy having it now is awesome. Him wrestling Wheeler Yuta, I have less interest in only because that story's kind of been told. They've wrestled important matches against each other. Wheeler was a part of the Best Friends for a long time before he left for the now kind of defunct Blackpool Combat Club. And so this match in particular doesn't get me excited, but they're so good bell to bell, I would assume that it will be entertaining. But yeah, I say Orange Cassidy retains for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I actually like both guys. I do. I think they're both great. I think Orange Cassidy gets a lot too much hate. He's certainly not world championship material. There's very few things
Right.
I agree on with Ignacio, but that is certainly one of them. But I think Orange Cassidy's certainly entertaining. He certainly has a place on AEW TV, right? And I don't even mind him having, a mid card title or whatever. But it's just this title just isn't important. I also hate the backpack thing too. I think he's completely disrespecting the title.
I don't hate the backpack thing as much, only because it's so character fitting.
True.
Um, that most times I would totally agree with you on that, Ben. But personally, I think, and ironically, if they were trying to sell the backpack, that would bug me. But it's a Jansport backpack. It's so on brand. It's just a backpack, and
Yeah.
it's so what Orange Cassidy, the character, would do in any scenario. He would carry his most valuable thing in his backpack, where he carries all his valuables. That's who Orange Cassidy is, right? That he's
I'd
that type of
agree
dude.
with you if it wasn't one of the first, if he wasn't the second ever champion. If he wasn't the second ever champion, I'd agree with you. But it's a new belt. It's a new belt, and it's just in someone's backpack. That's the issue I have with it.
I hear where you're coming from for sure. I
Yeah,
do. I personally I popped so hard for just the when he unloaded it out of the backpack. It cracked me up. Right.
yeah,
It's the classic slacker kid in high school with his backpack. He's always got the backpack and the you know it, I hear
yeah.
where
No, I
you're
get
coming
it. I
from, but
get it.
I
I get it.
also
I get it.
personally do dig the it cracks
Yeah,
me up enough
yeah,
that I'm like,
absolutely.
I'm okay with it.
And Jacob shows a message for Tony Khan, and that message is can't spell, learn. Let's move on. Let's move on because tonight
No
on
grammar, you gotta have the
AEW,
comma after learn.
yeah, Jacob, can't use
Yeah.
grammar.
Get on the
Learn.
grammar.
There we are. Come on now.
Sorry, I had to.
But yeah, anyway, tonight on AEW Dynamite, there will be a tag team battle royale for a spot in the four-way AEW tag team title match at Revolution. Now, I don't know if I'm missing something here, but why is it a fatal four-way? They announced last week when the Acclaim said that we're coming back for our titles, that it was going to be in a fatal four-way, even though the other two people haven't been announced yet. Why? It's not naturally happened. It's not naturally a four-way. They've decided to go, screw it. We know there's a storyline between the Guns and the Acclaimed, but screw it. Let's add two other tag teams in and let's have them, compete for the spot. Why? It makes no sense storyline-wise at all. It's just like, well, we probably think that the Guns and the Acclaimed can't sell the pay-per-view. Well, instead of adding something to the story, where it will, make sense, let's just instead just do some lazy bucking and do some more matches to find out who's going to be in it. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. It frustrates the hell out of me. In fact, I don't even know why it frustrates me so damn much, but it does. What do you think about it all, Clark?
I totally hear where you're coming from. My only thought is I wonder if there's like an injury between Bowens or Caster with the Acclaimed.
They still could have done a
And,
storyline.
and for working storyline, of course you could or whatever, but for working through to maybe it's like a I want to say like a bridge challenger till you can get whoever's hurt healthy, but that's the only thing I can think of to make sense of this. I don't know why you had the other teams. Logically, the Acclaimed Guns, I thought could sell for the pay per view. I don't get why it wouldn't. The Acclaimed were as over as anybody. I mean, you still see the T-shirts every week. I bought a T-shirt at the show. Like they, the Acclaimed are as over as anybody. So unless there's some reason to have done this, I don't get it myself. I'm with you on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the fact of they announced it as a four-way. Like, we're going to have a four-way title defense. Why?
Yeah, it doesn't
Why not a 3-way? Why not a 5-way? Why not? But why don't we just have everybody face everybody at this
bring
point?
out the whole division. Let's do a battle royal.
It's not like it's I understand it when it's something like Money in the Bank, right? Or even a contenders match where you put a lot of people in there to give a few people a chance. I understand that, but when it's for the championships, I do not understand it. Why on earth do the tag team champions have to defend it in a multi-man match when it doesn't make sense from a storyline perspective? It just really, really frustrates me. I think it's some of the weakest and laziest booking AEW's had to date. Perhaps they're too busy booking the ROH show because it's the same creative team on both. But it's too many hours of that's not even a dig. It's too many hours of programming for anybody in the world to be able to book, efficiently at this point. And Tony Khan needs to find somebody else to book Ring of Honor. That's the truth behind it. He can do the, Vince thing where, the booker reports to him, but he needs to find somebody to be in the main bucket for ROH. I truly, truly do believe that because nobody can book that many hours of television. It's just impossible. Truly, truly is for any man to do, especially somebody like Tony Khan, who's not just in the wrestling business. He's got a lot of other businesses outside and a lot of other commitments, which are quite frankly, he's got like 3 full-time commitments. So yeah, I do not blame him at all for the booking, but yeah. I think they need to get somebody else in. But yeah, let's now move on to Jon Moxley will be facing Evil Uno, who last week finally decided to show some balls. And I said after last week's AEW Dynamite, that it was basically the only thing I liked on the show. Evil Uno decided to be like, well, you know what, Hangman, F you. I'm not going to let you hold me back. I want to get in the face of Jon Moxley because he's talking crap about me in the Dark Order. Fantastic. Taking them like 2 years too long to make Evil Uno, have some balls. But yeah, they're doing it now, and I'm actually interested in to see how this goes. I mean, I hope it's not just a complete squash, and I hope Evil Uno looks good, but he's got an opportunity tonight, and it will certainly be an interesting one against Jon Moxley. But of course, Moxley's winning heading into that match against Hangman. But Clark, what are your thoughts? Do you reckon that Jon Moxley will get the victory?
I thought it was outstanding what Uno did last week, and I thought it was a long time coming. Yeah, Moxley gets the victory, but at the same time, I think there's a way to actually book this where Uno still looks really strong. And
Yeah.
that would be really exciting for me. Where if Evil Uno can really take Mox to the brink, and I don't want to say that's on Jon Moxley, but it is a little bit tonight. If we can be convinced that Evil Uno took him to the edge, that'd be really, really good for the future of this whole storyline, I think, period.
Yeah.
Like, I think Evil Uno might be a key piece here, especially after what he did last week, because I've not heard one negative comment about Uno's work on Dynamite to set this matchup, right?
No, absolutely not. I don't think there's one you can think of. And yeah, like you said, there's a way of doing this where Uno looks good, because I'm going to be honest, he can't, unless it's a squash, he can't look much worse. So I think if he just puts on a good performance against Moxley and then Moxley gets the victory, which of course he should do, I think Evil Uno could look really strong coming out of this, and it could even revive his career a little bit, because yeah, his booking has been questionable, but yeah, he's got an opportunity now. So both from a kayfabe and non-kayfabe perspective, this is Evil Uno's chance to prove himself tonight. So it should be an interesting one. And also today, the Acclaimed will be facing Big Bill, which is still an awful name. And Lee Moriarty, great guy. But yeah, anyway, this match I think could be decent. Big Bill, again, just like I mentioned with Evil Uno a second ago, this is a moment for Big Bill on Dynamite, a rare Dynamite opportunity for him to go out there and prove himself. But obviously, the Acclaimed are winning, unless Big Bill and Lee Moriarty are going to be the fourth tag team in this fatal 4-way, which we don't know any. I'm not even going to get into it again, Clark. Take it.
I mean, look, I'm a huge fan of W. Morrissey, Big Bill, Big Cass, whatever you want to call him. Same with Lee Moriarty. I hope they put on a show tonight. I hope they put on a great match. And I hope the Acclaim go over at the end of the day. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, it's just a weird spot. It's weird booking there. It's weird storytelling wise with the whole tag team division. Because realistically, Big Bill and Morrissey, it's not a tag team. It's they're in the firm, but they're not a tag team.
They're really
And
not.
that's yeah.
And it's somebody, right, who is as talented as Lee Moriarty, right? And he's a great guy as well. I've
Yeah.
spoken to him multiple times. He's a great, great guy. Somebody as talented as Lee Moriarty, I actually think he's one of the young stars which AEW have done the worst with, because he has the talent, he has the creative mind. He's a very, very creative mind. And it just does annoy me that they just shoved him in the firm. They didn't really do much for him before that. He had the match with Punk. And when he had that match with Punk, I thought, well, from here he's going to break out. But he didn't.
Awesome.
And it was a great match too, so you can't blame him.
It's really, really, really good.
It's just, it's a confusing thing, and it just annoys me. The firm in general, I just hate.
I'm with you on that, and that's not their fault, because to be honest, like, I'm a huge Malcolm Bivens fan, I guess. I'm a huge fan of the whole group. Actually, I like everybody that's in it. They got really screwed around by what happened at All Out. I think from there it would have been a different story with what happened with having to separate from MJF.
They weren't going to separate anyway.
The idea was eventually, but the idea was to elevate them, and they weren't in a position to be elevated. And they may turn out to be the biggest victims of the CM Punk thing, because if CM Punk's there to be opposite MJF, which was the plan initially, we're looking at a completely different story than we are now. Yeah. And I would say that as much as they don't do much for me now, I don't blame them either.
Yeah, no, that is a, that is a good point, to be fair. That could have perhaps changed things a little bit. But I mean, even still, the booking of them just been dreadful, and it could and should be better than it was there. But now let's move on to the next segment really, really quickly, and that is Saraya will be facing Sky Blue today on Dynamite, and they're going to be advancing this massively complicated multiverse storyline, which is, the what's the slogan again, Clark, they're using for it?
I can't even remember off the top of my head.
Originals versus
the originals versus the new breed or something like the new.
It's awful.
It's
let me quickly fact check it. Originals versus Outsiders. That's the one. Outsiders. It's just
WCW did well with the Outsiders, though. I will say that in their defense.
AEW are not. But anyway, I'm always excited to see. I was excited to see a big, all-women storyline in AEW, because I've criticized the women's booking, but it's not been great. It's been a complete and utter mess. The championship has become a secondary to the storyline. In fact, Jamie Hayter has become a secondary to Britt Baker again, like I talked about on last Thursday's show. But it's whatever. Soraya's obviously winning this one. Anything to add, Clark?
This is where I would say Jade Cargill is the most over and most dominant woman in AEW, and she should be not only involved in the storyline, but calling the shots. It's Jade Cargill. Like, she's made the TBS belt the most important belt in the women's division in AEW since she's had it. It's more important than the world title. It is. And that's no knock on the talent with Dr. Britt and with Thunder Rosa and with everybody that's been at the Tony Storm, with everybody that's been at the top, Jamie Hayter. But at the end of the day, Jade Cargill is the most dominant woman in AEW. And if we're going to do this storyline, how is she not involved? And how is she not calling the shots?
Great point. Fantastic point I hadn't even thought about. But yeah, that's another issue with the storyline. Why isn't Jade Cargill involved? Because let's be real here. She actually is the face of the division at this point. The fact that she's not gone for Jamie Hayter. I know obviously the entire thing of single titles going for world titles is a long debate in wrestling anyway. But yeah, and Bell in the comments here is saying Saraya and Tony Storm are like the children of the NWA, and Bella twins. Nobody else.
That is it. By the way, on fire in the comments today. Monster shout out.
Dale has been the MVP of this
That is
of
the
this podcast.
MVP.
But guys, that basically brings us to a close today. Thank you for joining us. Clark will be back here tomorrow. It's him and Anthony doing a throwback Thursday. I'll be back with Kobe and Anthony on Friday. We're going to be heading to SmackDown. We're going to be doing the show at 12 p.m. UK time, 7 Eastern, I think that is, the hour before SmackDown. We'll be leading you guys right into Friday Night SmackDown. So that's going to be a great, great show. And then, yeah. But Clark, this will be the last time I see you on air for the next.
I know it's going to be
week.
till next Tuesday. I'll see you
Next Tuesday. Nice.
Yeah, next Tuesday, I believe, is the next time you and I will be on air together. But this is a blast.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, but yeah, anyway, Clark, I hope you have a great weekend away. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Please leave a like and comment. We really appreciate it. It really helps us. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you.